Hi, host Eric here. It's Talking with Famous People. Tonight we're going to talk about using language as a weapon. My favorite thing to do. That's a reference to the old video. This is part two of that video. I like that video a lot. I'm wearing the orange safety vest, and I'm feeling like quite the showman. I think because I'm just loving being in front of the camera in that video and talking about being a weapon wielding language user. In this instance, let's talk about using accusation as a weapon. How to do it well, and what definitely not to do if you don't want to chew on your own dignity, or let me feast upon it, as the case may be. So, let's talk about it. You're going to accuse somebody of something. What do you need to know? You have to have down. First of all, if you accuse somebody who's really weak, then you can probably get away with it. But then you're a scumbag, right? You need to have a good cause to accuse somebody of something. Either you're seeking genuine justice for an immediate thing, or you're seeking broad justice for general douchebaggery. Now, the latter one, better be strict with yourself about it. You can use that standard to justify just about anything, so don't go with it, right? Remember, number one rule when using language as a weapon is maintain the moral high ground. If you lose that, you lose everything. You've got to be a paladin. I try to be a fucking paladin. I I try never to lie. It's not quite possible. The other day I caught myself lying when I said to somebody that I didn't. I positioned that I had interpreted somebody's comment as way X. But in reality, I had determined there was two possible interpretations, X and Y. I didn't want to respond to Y. I wanted to respond to X. So I just positioned it as though that was the only interpretation I had noticed, or I come to realize. It was the most obvious one. Now this allows you to legitimately claim, oh, there's a misinterpretation. It does all sorts of shit, right? But it's still a lie. And I don't like to lie. So I ended up fessing that one up to the person to whom I lied. It extremely minor, but it matters. To me, it's a sign that you're doing the right thing. Nick, on the other hand, is not doing the right thing because he doesn't even understand the basics of accusation. Foremost, understand that to accuse somebody of something, you have a prima facie burden, and then you have your case to make, okay? Before you can make a case, before you ever could make an accusation formally in court, and this should be the same way with you in your life, you need to make sure you meet your prima facie burden, that is, say, means, motive, opportunity. And you must remember that that is not evidence of anything. We all currently have the means, motive, opportunity to commit vehicular manslaughter. So if somebody has a hit and run death near you, that doesn't mean that you are more likely to have done it because you have the means, motive, opportunity. It just means you're more likely to have done it than somebody who doesn't have all three of those things. Because anybody who doesn't have all three of those things, it's impossible for them to be guilty of the crime. So all you're doing is establishing that it's possible that somebody did a crime. It's possible that I killed Jonathan Durgans, who was murdered near me a few weeks ago, and the crime remains unsolved. It's possible until and unless I establish that I was actually out of town that week or whatever else. It's possible for anybody who was in town and not otherwise accounted for that it's they who did it. That is not a reason to believe any of them is more likely to have done it, and thus you cannot use such things as evidence, rather, but as meeting your burden. So it's a requirement before you can start making your case. Now, what Nick, who has perhaps the worst TI of any ENTP I've ever met, he's not accustomed to being held to account at all. So his warrants are incredibly weak, and he relies entirely on trying to manipulate people socially into feeling as though he's probably right. But if you actually parse anything he's saying down, unfortunately for him, the normal rule for an HP is this: if you let me talk about it long enough, I'll win. If I'm able to keep having my platform and keep my voice going and keep talking about it, eventually I'll win this point. I just need to keep you talking. Won't work for him because because he's using deceitful methodologies to try to convince people, he's already made a lot of contradictions, and he hasn't even established any of his case. All he's done so far is establish prima facie burdens. Yeah, I had means, motive, and opportunity. I mean, the motive's pretty thin. You had to really come up with a big stretch to come up with a motive. And that's just your prima facie burden, right? If you are somebody who is presenting the fact that you can meet prima facie burdens as evidence against somebody else, that they are doing something wrong, you are putting yourself in an extremely vulnerable position, and you may end up humiliated and ostracized like Nick, you know? Of course, hopefully you won't, because hopefully you're not a fucking scumbag, lying scumbag. Don't lie. The thing is, lying is weak, because once you're caught, you're fucked. You know, now he has no moral high ground. He's got to scramble around defending the veracity of any sentence he says, because he said so many contradictions in the course of trying to accuse me. And he was only even trying to establish his prima facie burden, not actually even establishing any evidence, because there was none. There's absolutely zero cause to believe that I actually did this. There's plenty of cause to believe that he can meet his prima facie burdens, but that doesn't mean anything. I can meet his prima facie burdens too. I can meet, we can meet the prima facie burdens of everybody who's in the room, plus everybody who's on the internet who is aware of it. I mean, basically, anybody who was online in the world, it could have been. You can meet those prima facie burdens. Opportunity is a lot easier in the internet age to establish. Well, you could have been online. Joe from Brazil could have done it. I don't know. It doesn't matter, because those prima facie burdens don't mean anything. They just mean you aren't excluded from possibility. You don't have an alibi, basically. So there's two issues here. There's number one issue is effectiveness. You don't want to be the world's worst salesman like Nick and try to sell somebody something and then end up walking away with that product shoved up your ass crying, like Nick did. So you don't want to be that ineffective, for one thing. But most importantly, and vastly more significantly, you are an agent in this world who has moral agency, moral obligations, moral duties, moral failings, and moral achievements. If that ship isn't sound, you're destined for a life of piracy. No safe harbor will take you in, because you're the bad guy. I promise that I won't be the bad guy, and if I am, I'll call myself out on it immediately, as best I can. I'm not Jesus. I'm not free from sin. But you can rely on the fact that I am wise enough to know that I have to have a sound house. I live in glass house, right? So I don't live in a glass house. I live in a house that doesn't have any walls at all. So when I throw stones, other people's walls get a hole poked in them, and they go, you're looking inside. I'm an open book. Why can I be an open book? I got nothing to hide. Why do I have nothing to hide? Because I'm a moral person. Why am I a moral person? Because I let TI do its job. We have axioms from which we can deduce moral truths. It's that simple. There are things we can know about argumentation that can dictate to us when it is morally acceptable to accuse somebody and when it's not. Was it morally acceptable for Nick to accuse me because he could establish my prima facie burden? Hell no. It was deeply unethical to drag someone's name through the mud without some evidence of their wrongdoing. I have no problem dragging Nick's name through the mud because he's the one who put all the mud there with his lies. Those are his lies. He should have to do the laundry to wash them out. Now, unfortunately, at this point, I know Nick's type. He's like my ex-boss, the only other person I ever met like that, which is to mean his cowardice runs deep. He's deeply, deeply a coward, above all else. he won't come back and talk about this. There's no chance he will. I'd be happy to have a 5-hour-long conversation with him about it. But he's going to have to answer my questions. He doesn't get to play, I'm moderating this thing and you're the issue here, Eric. Because that's already been, he tried that gambit and it revealed his true nature. There's no disputing the fact now that he's a liar because he had a chance to dispute that fact and chose not to. I asked him to reconcile the contradictions. Explain to me. He refused. My accusation, therefore, stands on the flow. It's unanswered. He's had opportunity to answer it, and I have established my prima facie burdens, and I have evidence. I'm ready to present my case. He's asking you to enter a default judgment against him by refusing to be deposed. Just like my former boss. The bad people of the world hate having to answer questions. So, Nick, you're welcome to come back here. Know that when you do, as soon as I realize you are here, I will arrive to ask you questions, to resume my line of questioning. You will be questioned to the last stretch of your life. I will force you to reconcile every contradiction. I will force you to come to terms with your own moral bankruptcy. And if you are not legitimately sobbing in despair by the end of it, then we're not done talking. So, yeah. Accusing people is dangerous business. Make sure you know what you're doing. If you accuse the wrong person, if you accuse a moral person of something they didn't do, especially an ENTP, or if that moral person who didn't do anything knows an ENTP like me, or is me, and you do that, well, you're not going to, you won't have a good time, okay? If you don't have an ethical standard, and you claim you do, then you're lying. But if I say, do you have a standard? And you say, yes. And you compare it to it, and you say, yes. And I ask you if you met your own criterion for acceptable behavior in throwing around accusations, and you say, yes. And then later you say you were wrong, and you still don't answer any of the questions, then you know what you're doing? You're lying. You're a big liar like Nick. Now, Nick, your lies and your deceit have made you this bed of shit. And you can lie in it in two ways. You and your vagina can run off and hide away. Oh my gosh, you're adorable. You're adorable. Hiding away, you little fucking pussy. Fucking punk. Come in here and make accusations, and when you're held to account, you run away. You're a little chicken shit bitch, Nick. Wow. What a chicken shit little bitch you are. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, that's why you don't make wild accusations against moral people who don't have anything to hide, because you got nothing on them. Here I am, wide open. Nick, come and get me. Above board. No private conversations between us. Last time I had a private conversation with you and gave you good advice, you came out of that room and suggested, without providing any details, that I had said something awful in there. So, nope, you don't ever get to speak with me privately. I love to speak to you publicly, though. So come on. Come on, buddy. Remember how you're so super smart and are concerned about everybody and are helping them understand things? Come on back. You talked for 2 days without me forcing you under my framework. Means you made 2 days of mistakes, because for those entire 2 days, you were not offering any evidence of anything other than my prima facie burdens. And as soon as it got time to start walking on that chain and really fucking just shove it up your ass, well, you little fucking bitch, you ran away. Come on back, Nick. See you later. And that's weaponization of language. Make sure it's clear at the end that one person is a person, a human being, always willing to engage and talk and answer questions and be held accountable. And that the other party, Nick, the so-called world's greatest salesman, is a worthless sack of shit and a puddle that we ought to all vomit onto. Until he wants to come back and be accountable, in which case he can rejoin the human race. But that's not going to be fun, Nick. You're not going to enjoy that. Your vagina is going to be very sore by the time I'm done with you, bitch. I don't care the accusations. What I hate is not answering my questions. If there's anything in life I fucking hate, it's people who won't answer my questions and still want to make assertions. That is T.I. sacrilege. And heathen, you're going to burn at the fucking stake!